Well, hi, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us here at USITT Follow-Up Fridays. I'd like to invite today some of our IATSE professionals who are going to speak to you about ladder safety basics for the entertainment industry workers. Thanks, folks. We're following up with exhibitors that were able to join us for Virtually Anywhere 2021, but we'll hopefully be back to you live next March in Baltimore. I'd like to welcome today, we have presenters Alan Rowe, DeJon Ellis, and Hannah D'Amico. Thanks, folks, for being here. Hannah, I think you have some introductory remarks. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Christine, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We're really happy to be here with USITT and teach you guys a little bit about ladder safety. So as Christine said, this is Ladder Safety Basics for Entertainment Industry Workers. My name is Hannah D'Amico. I am the Safety and Training Outreach Coordinator for the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, more commonly known as the IATSE. For those who don't know, we are the union behind entertainment, so we represent workers backstage in the entertainment industry. And today we have two very wonderful, very experienced presenters who have worked in the craft for many years, DeJon Ellis Jr. of IATSE Local 80 and Alan Rowe of IATSE Local 728. So with that, I'm going to pass you off to them and we're going to learn a little bit about ladder safety. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, DeJon, you want to go ahead and start?
Great. My name is DeJon Ellis. I'm a member of Local 80. Can you get the next slide, Hannah? Why is ladder safety important?
Hang on a second. I think we jumped something somewhere. So, okay. So I'm Alan Rowe. I am. First off, good afternoon, everyone, and good morning for those of you who are here with us on the West Coast. My name is Alan Rowe. I am the Director of Safety and Training for IATSE Local 728, and I'm the Chair of the IATSE Crafts Advancement Program. Welcome. We are very happy to have you all with us today. Today's topic, of course, is ladder safety. If we can go to the next slide, please, Hannah. And why is ladder safety important? Well, it's kind of an obvious thing. We all work in this environment that has gravity. Gravity causes us to fall. And a lot of people mistakenly will think that you won't get injured from a fall from like 4 feet or 6 feet. But in reality, you can trip, slip, or fall and die from that. So ladder safety is very important in everything we do because we are introducing ourselves to a hazard the further away we get from the earth. And falls are a leading cause of injuries in most workspaces or most areas where we work. Every aspect of the entertainment industry uses ladders. It doesn't matter what you do. At some point in time, you have the opportunity to use a ladder. And if you don't do it at work, you certainly do it at home. And we've all seen, or perhaps even been, that person that says, oh, I don't want to go all the way to the truck or the garage and get a ladder, so I'm just going to stand on the back of this chair. We've all seen it. If you're fortunate, you've seen it not result in an accident, but most of us have actually seen people have accidents that way. NIOSH, which is the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, it's OSHA's sister organization, puts together statistics. So 500,000 people every year are treated for ladder injuries. Okay, that's a lot. 500,000 people. Out of that, in 2011, there were an estimated 15,460 non-fatal injuries that resulted in days away from work. Now, we work in an industry that is either hourly or daily, which means that people may not have gotten paid for those days. Is it worth saving the minute to go get the ladder to risk a day's worth of work? Good question. It's an easy answer. It's not worth it. Take the time to get the ladder. And then an estimated 34,000 people had to go to the emergency room. 34,000 people went to the emergency room because they had a ladder incident in 2011. That's pretty significant. Okay, next slide, please. So one of the things that's important to remember is that safety is the employer's responsibility. Now, this means that they are responsible for us having a safe and healthful workplace. That's called the OSHA General Duty Clause. It means that they're supposed to protect us from recognized hazards, and they are also supposed to provide us with the equipment and tools to address any recognized hazard that we have. Oh, and training too. Very important part of it. Now, just because safety is the employer's responsibility doesn't mean that we don't have any responsibility. We absolutely have responsibility. We have a responsibility to abide by the employer's recommendations, protocols, and standards. If they want us to do something safety-wise, that's what we do. We have studios here in Southern California that go above and beyond the OSHA standards in fall protection. That's our responsibility to follow their guidelines. It's also our responsibility to our families and our fellow crew people not to get injured. It might be the employer's responsibility to keep me from breaking my leg, but at the end of it all, it's my leg that gets broken. So we have a responsibility to ourselves when it comes to safety. Next slide, please. A very important thing to remember and a good perspective to keep on ladder usage is that ladders are tools. Just like every other tool in our toolbox, ladders are tools. And so when we use the tool, we need to keep several things in mind. First and foremost at this point is that we have to use the right tool for the job. We need to use an extension ladder when we need to get somewhere that requires an extension ladder, an A-frame ladder when we need to use an A-frame ladder, and the two things are not the same. Now, of course, we do have Little Giants and all sorts of that, but they create A-frames, they create extension ladders. We have to use the right tool for the right job, and we also have to make sure that our tools are maintained properly, and we have to regularly inspect them, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. So now I'm going to give it over to my friend DeJon to talk about the common types of ladders.
So there are three categories. You have fixed ladder, portable ladder, and mobile ladder. Next slide. So a fixed ladder is one that you'll commonly see on the side of a building. It's a ladder that cannot be readily moved or carried because it is an integral part of a building or structure. A portable ladder is a ladder that can readily be moved or carried. There are two types of portable ladders, self-supporting and non-self-supporting portable ladders. Here are examples of a portable self-supporting ladders. They can stand on their own and do not require additional support. Commonly used are A-frame ladders. Portable non-self-supporting ladders, also known as extension ladders, cannot stand on their own and require the additional support of a stable structure to use. And mobile ladders. These are movable, fixed height, self-supporting ladders. There are two types of mobile ladders: mobile ladder stands and mobile ladder stand platforms. A mobile ladder stand is a fixed height, self-supporting ladder that has stairs accessing a top step. These ladders are intended to be used by one person. Now, a mobile ladder stand platform, that provides a larger elevated work surface, i.e. the platform. That will allow multiple workers to use the ladder at the same time and space to stage materials and tools.
Okay, so now we'll talk about what you need to do before you use the ladder. So there are very different stages that we're going to talk about today. So now we'll talk about what to do before you use the ladder. So next slide, please. First and foremost, you need to be familiar with the safety regulations and the safe use of the ladder. And the way to get this information is to read the information safety label that's on the ladder. And each one will have proper information on it. And you have to be familiar with this, and you should get some training in this. And so that will be there. There will also be interesting things there like your duty limit, which we'll talk about in a moment. The extension ladders will often have a little L on them that tells you if it's properly angled. And of course, they're the ones that so many of us, and we've seen so many people ignore, which say, do not stand on this step, or this is not a seat. Those are also on the ladder, and those we also have to abide by and follow those rules. Next slide, please. So ladder classifications, and we're talking about duty ratings here. And what the duty rating is, it tells you the maximum weight capacity of the ladder. And this is important to know, and we'll look at the chart in the next slide. But you'll find this on the label, and you need to read the label, of course. Obviously, we wouldn't talk about it. But it's important not to exceed the weight limit of the ladder. And we have to bear in mind that not only are we talking about the weight of ourselves, but also the weight of our clothing, depending on where we are, the weight of the tools that we have with us, and whatever equipment that we're using. So next slide, please. So here are the 5 classifications. And it goes from type 1 AA special duty for 375 pounds all the way down to type 3 light duty, 200 pounds. Now, I am a 200-pound man who works on ladders. I don't want to see a type 3 ladder, because that means that if I'm wearing shorts and a light shirt and appropriate footwear, that's about all I can do on that ladder is climb it, if I'm lucky, and I didn't eat the extra breakfast burrito. So I don't want to see that. And when I was a crew chief, I never wanted to see anything less than the special duty or the heavy duty ladder, because the situations in which we work are very fluid. So we always want to be able to have the most flexible piece of equipment so we don't have to worry about it at the time. I don't think in our industry there's a whole lot of use for a type 2 and a type 3 ladder because of what we do, but that's not my decision to make. And if I were the king of show business, that's the way it would be. But it's important to know what this is. And also there's questions with A-frame ladders. So an A-frame ladder has a rating on it. If it's a double-sided A-frame ladder, the duty rating is for each side. If it's a single-sided A-frame ladder, then it's only for the one side. Now, each company will have different labeling or indications on what it is. The Werner label color indicator is the one that comes to my mind, and I think it's really brilliant. They cast the fiberglass in a color which indicates what the duty rating of that particular ladder is, so that you can look at an instant, know that the ladder that you're picking up is the one that you want. Okay, next slide, please. We have to inspect our ladders before each use. Now, we do this subconsciously with tools that we use all the time. If we pick up a hammer that something's wrong with it, we're going to know if we use a hammer all the time. So we inspect things, or have the opportunity to inspect things, more often than we think we do. We don't have to always do a fine point inspection, but we need to make sure that the ladder is in good working condition. Make sure it's got all of its parts, at least all of its parts that are not accessories to hold paint buckets and things like that. If you're not painting, you don't need the paint bucket accessory, but make sure that it's got all of the cross bracing, all of the rungs are in place, the rails are in good shape, it doesn't sway or lean to one side, because that can cause it to fall over, and falling over, of course, is a bad thing. And if we find a ladder that is in bad shape, that is not suitable for use, if it's hazardous or dangerous to use, we need to tag it, label it, take it out of service. There is a belief that we should destroy ladders so nobody else could do it. However, there's a big problem with that. It's not your ladder. Well, maybe it is your ladder, and if it is your ladder, you can do that because it's your ladder, but don't do it on company time, because your employer may not want you to spend the time destroying the ladder. But you shouldn't destroy the ladder, and you should tag it, send it back to where it came from, let them deal with it. They may be able to fix it, or they may want to destroy it themselves. It's their ladder, it's their problem. If you take it upon yourself to do it, you're only going to cost your employer the cost to replace that ladder that didn't need to be replaced. It needed to be fixed or evaluated by somebody else. And then every so often, the ladder does need to be inspected, but that should be done by your rental house or whoever owns it, and a competent person has to do it. A competent person is someone through education or experience, is familiar with the operation and manufacturing a device, and has the ability to stop the process that is being in use. So that could be a lot of different people, but for the most part, whoever owns the ladder has the responsibility as well inspected on a periodic basis. Okay, next slide, please. One thing that we need to look at also when we're inspecting is to make sure that the ladder is in good maintenance, in good quality, and good shape. And we need to make sure that it is appropriate to use. It need to make sure that it's free of oil and grease or anything that could be slippery that can cause your hands or feet to slip, because that's no fun. I'm sure a lot of us have experienced that. And any components that are on the ladder or near where the ladder is being placed need to be free of anything that can snag clothing, equipment, or tools. Best case scenario in this case is you'll be embarrassed when it rips your clothes, or the worst case scenario is it can cause you to lose your balance, or you get scratched or punctured and fall. we've seen this a lot. The ladder itself might be fine, but it gets placed up somewhere that you really physically can't climb. So that you have to be mindful of that as well. The ladder rungs, cleats, and steps must be level and parallel and uniformly spaced, because if they're not uniformly spaced, our minds and our bodies work expecting it there, and if it's not there, this is like the rise ladder run with steps. If it's not at the right place, you're going to trip, or you're going to feel it's not there, and it's going to be a very uncomfortable and difficult thing to get off of that ladder. Okay, next slide, please. Moving mobile ladders. This one is a lot of fun. People have some misconceptions about this as well. You need to make sure that the ladder is unoccupied before you move it. I know, there are a lot of people out there that want to do the Titanic, I'm on top of the world thing, but the ladder really has to be, you can't have somebody in there, because that changes the dynamic of the force of the ladder, and it can tip over really easily that way. Plus, you also have to make sure where you're going with the ladder, and you're not running into anything overhead or running over anything you're not doing, or running into anything. And if you have somebody on the ladder as well, you could injure them. So you should not have anybody or any equipment on that mobile ladder while you are moving it around. And make sure that the locking mechanisms work. You disengage them so you don't have that one wheel that's stuck, and verify that they move freely. Okay, next slide, please. All right, now we've talked about everything else. We'll talk about setting up the ladder. And then I think at that point, I'll give it back over to DeJon to talk about actually climbing the ladder. So next slide. Okay, first, you want to make sure that you place your ladder on firm, level ground. And make sure that there's nothing slippery at the bottom of the ladder or at the top of the ladder that's going to cause somebody any difficulty getting onto or off of the ladder. This is, should be all common sense, but we need to actually think about these things and say these things in order for them to register with us. I'm sure that many of us have seen the occasion where somebody puts the ladder down on sod and it's level at first, but the moment somebody steps on it, it goes whoop, and it's no longer level. What do we do in that situation? Well, we put down a little piece of plywood or something to distribute the weight so that it doesn't sink into the earth. It's got to be firm. You also don't want to place the ladder on anything to make it elevated or longer. If you need a longer ladder, get a longer ladder. We've seen people put these ladders on things from boxes to crates to car shelves or camper shelves. It's not acceptable use. If you need another ladder, get another ladder. If you can't get a ladder to do what you need to do, then get an aerial lift to do it. This is your life that depends upon this. And working in safety and health, I've seen far too many needless tragedies just because somebody wanted to save a little bit of time. And then again, keep areas clear around the top and bottom of the ladders, not just of personnel, but also of equipment, so things don't get kicked down or kicked into the ladder, or somebody trips, falls, hits the ladder. So just, good housekeeping is very, very important. Okay, next slide, please. The 4-to-1 rule. This is good. Now, it's very important to have your ladder at a proper angle when you set it up. There's the 4-to-1 rule. We'll talk about this, but first I have to say that, yes, there is an app for this. NIOSH makes an app for both the Google and Apple devices. And what you can do with this is you put it on your phone, you put your phone up next to it, and it will tell you if your ladder is at the proper angle to climb. If the angle is too steep and you try to climb it, your ladder is naturally going to want to fall backwards as you get to the top. If it's too shallow, it can kick out at the bottom and you can fall, or the ladder itself can collapse. So it really needs to be at this particular angle. And as you look here, there's a couple of things to notice about this slide. One, we're creating a right triangle, and your working length is going to be the hypotenuse of the triangle. And the working length of the ladder is the distance between the foot of the ladder to the point of support. It's not the overall length of the ladder, which we'll talk about in a moment. But for the point of support to the foot of the ladder is your working length. Now you divide that by 4, and that tells you how far away the foot of your ladder needs to be from that wall or whatever it is you're leaning the ladder up against. That is the 4-to-1 rule. 1 unit from the foot of the ladder to the wall equals 4 units on the working length of the ladder. And again, the working length of the ladder is from the foot of the ladder to the point of support. The next slide, please. Now, With this particular illustration, which is from a Canadian safety organization, and I really like this one, we talk about the overall length of the ladder. Because if you're using an extension ladder to gain access to a roof area or an elevated area, you need to have at least 3 feet extending above that point of support, or 1 meter if you're Canadian. And that way it gives the person who's climbing the ladder and getting on and off the ladder the ability to have something to hold on to while they shift your weight onto the ladder. This is perhaps the most dangerous part of getting on and off a ladder, because you're actually taking your weight and you're shifting it away from the structure of the ladder and going onto the roof. So you've got to have that extra space. Now, there are also some wonderful tools that are extensions to extension ladders, and they are OSHA approved. And basically what they do is they extend the rungs and then they put them out a little bit so you can actually walk through those. And you can hold on to the rungs of the ladder and walk straight forward, so you don't have to step off and around the ladder. You just climb up, go through it, you're on the roof. To get back, you just do exactly the reverse. Put your hand on the ladder, get on the ladder, and climb down. They're really, really great extensions. Next slide, please. And then mobile ladders. So setting these up, and we've seen these a lot. We use these a lot in shops, different areas where we have storage. We see them also in hardware stores, things like that. So these all will have a locking mechanism. You want to, before you get on the ladder, you want to make sure that the locking mechanism is in fact locked and it's not going to move, because that changes its dynamic ability to support your weight if it can roll. I know there are people who think that that's what it's there for, that we can pull ourselves along. And I won't say it, I won't tell it now, but I have a really good horror story about somebody thinking that they can do that. So you want to engage the lock, make sure that all of the steps are clear from slipping and tripping hazards, and use the ladder as a ladder, and don't stand on the rails. Don't stand on the mid rail or the toe board. If you need to get higher, get the proper tool. Either another ladder or, in the case of a shop, a forklift might be what you need to get where you are. And it's the employer's responsibility to make sure you have the appropriate tools you need to do your job safely. So if it takes a few extra minutes, it takes a few extra minutes. That's just the way it is. Our safety is worth the time to do it properly. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, here we are. And now this is the last thing I'm going to talk about with setting up your ladder. If you have to set up your ladder over a door, it's not an ideal situation, but sometimes we have to do it. You need to take extra precautions to make sure that the door is not used. You can lock it, you can block it open, you can barricade it, you can have a monitor at the bottom of the door, you can do all of those things. But it's really, really important to make sure that nobody goes through that door. Even if it's locked, somebody might have a key, and if the door swings open towards the ladder, obviously it's going to hit the ladder and knock somebody off. But even if the door swings the other direction, don't assume that the person is going to see the ladder. We have a tendency to be very myopic in our focus, and we will miss things like that. And so people would walk right into that ladder. So barricading it, in my mind, is essential. You have to stop somebody from going through there. And most of the time, or a good deal of the time that we're doing work on ladders in this case, we often have somebody helping us, either handing us up equipment or managing equipment for us or doing something like that. They can also act as a monitor to keep people away from the door and away from the bottom of the ladder. But take extra precaution whenever you're using a ladder around a door, because that introduces an extra element of hazard that can really ruin your day. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it back over to DeJon to talk about safe climbing.
Thanks, Alan. Safe climbing tips. So it seems pretty obvious, but only one person at a time is permitted on a ladder unless the ladder is specifically designed for multiple climbers. Now, that's not counting a person who's spotting the ladder at the bottom. If he has this, 1 foot on that bottom rung, that's perfectly allowed. It's important that we wear appropriate footwear. When using a ladder, wear shoes that are clean and slip resistant. Do not wear leather-soled shoes, open-toed shoes, or high heels. Here in California, we have a really relaxed attitude. And sometimes on set, you'll see certain departments that wear open-toed shoes. Open-toed shoes aren't really allowed on set, but if you happen to have open-toed shoes, don't try to climb a ladder. And we also don't recommend climbing a ladder in dress shoes or high heels. And never, ever climb a ladder barefoot. Next slide, please. Keep your hands free. Do not carry any items or tools in your hands that will interfere with your ability to grip the ladder. You should use a tool belt. Let's say you need to have a screw gun for the work you're doing on top of the ladder. It's important if you have a holster on your tool belt to put that screw gun in. Or ask a fellow coworker to hold your tools while you're climbing and then hand them up to you when you need them. For safe climbing technique, you want to always face the ladder as you're going up or coming down. I've seen people try to come down a ladder front ways. That's very dangerous. You want to keep your body centered inside the side rails while climbing and working. If necessary, ask a coworker to stabilize the ladder while climbing. And don't overreach while using a ladder. It's not safe to, get on your tippy toes or go past, the second to last rung. If you're having trouble reaching the work, get a taller ladder. Take the time, be safe, get a taller ladder. Climb slowly and deliberately. Avoid sudden movements. Do not attempt to move, shift, or extend the ladder while in use. You'll see some people on stage or set, let's say you're on an 8-step or a 10-step ladder, and you start climbing and you get to the 6-foot range, and you notice that not all 4 feet are properly planted on the ground. Some people have the tendency to want to wiggle, shake the ladder while they're on it. I've actually seen an accident happen that way on a 10-foot ladder, and it didn't end well. So, never try to shake the ladder to get it, planted correctly. Come down and make sure that all 4 feet are planted on the floor as it should be, and then climb back up. Now, a general rule is we always want to maintain at least 3 points of contact while using the ladder. 2 hands and 1 foot, or 2 feet and 1 hand. There's some very robust stage hands and grips and stage workers out there that can use their stomach sometimes, and that's not allowed. That's not a point of contact. Putting your body or your stomach onto the ladder or onto the top rung, is not an allowable use for points of contact. You always want to have 2 hands on and at least 1 foot, or 2 feet and 1 hand. You never want to step or stand higher than the step indicated on the label marking the highest standing level. For mobile ladders, do not stand on the handrails, mid-rails, or the toe boards. And this goes back to my point. If you need a taller ladder, get a taller ladder. Do not use a ladder if you feel tired or dizzy. Do not use a ladder in high winds or storms. And do not use aluminum ladders near electrical sources or with power tools. And this is important in our industry because, we work around electricity. We work around temporary power and high wattage and high amp of temporary power for studio lights. So it's very important we have the proper equipment. And if you're not feeling well, if you're dizzy, if you're having, a bout of vertigo of some sort, don't climb the ladder. Tell the boss, let them know you're not feeling well, someone else should do it. And if you happen to be working in exterior shots outside and it's high wind, you want to be careful. You want to be cognizant of the wind. And if it's, if you feel it, that it's unstable as you climb, you might want to, definitely get a spotter or, rethink the situation and maybe get a scissor lift or a condor. Of course, if it's high winds, that won't work either, but it depends on the situation.
Hi, everyone. And that brings us to questions. I am going to stop sharing my screen. There we go.
Hi, folks. So thank you for the presentation, Alan and DeJon. We're going to wait for questions. So I'm just going to chat a little while people get their questions. Drop your questions into chat. We'll get them here on the screen and we'll share them with everybody so they can take your questions as we go. Until then, and we'll give people a few minutes if you folks don't mind, I'll just show my website. My website, really touchy laptop here, new laptop website here, so you can be in the lookout for future webinars from USITT in the following Fridays. We have great conversations on no more 10 out of 12s, teaching after COVID, mitigation of an out of balance counterweight system. Both that one and ground rigging arena are brought to you by ETCP certified individuals. Thanks for being here today, folks, and bringing your content here today. I'll just keep chatting a little. Sometimes we get questions right at the end, if you don't mind. I can bring up some other banners. I know that Hannah, you had some other links you wanted to share. I realized that we had some character limitations, so I couldn't do all the links in one. So we're going to share some links with you. But it seems that we do have a question here. Do you want to look at this one from Paul, Hannah?
Yes.
So, okay, I'll go ahead and jump in on this one. So a lot of this you're going to have to play by ear. Obviously, if you're using equipment and the equipment needs to be managed by somebody, it's a good time to have somebody there. My opinion about ladder spotters is you always need them, really. Because if you have people working up at height, they're going to need help. Being on a ladder is intrinsically hazardous. You should not ever be working on a ladder by yourself. Yes, you should never be the only person in the room. So, DeJon?
And definitely always for extension ladders, leaning up against a building, you always want to have someone spotting that ladder as you climb an extension ladder. And some of our ladders can go upwards of 30 feet. And so it's not only is it important to get that proper angle, you want to have someone down there just to help secure that ladder.
Yeah, they keep that bottom stable so it doesn't slip out. And it's just a great idea.
Great. And Christine, we can pull up Chip's question as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Paul, for that question.
Thank you, Paul.
So DeJon, the local Lady Grips do a lot of different work with ladders. You want to take this one?
Yeah, so I'm familiar with this type of equipment. We use them a lot in the sitcom field. They're not as common anymore, but they were definitely in the beginning of my career. Well, one safety tip is to not be on that ladder while it's moving. One of the techniques we use when you extend the trestle, so we would have 8 or 10 foot A-frames with a trestle that can extend you another upwards of 6 feet. And one of the techniques you straddle that trestle to get to the work that you're working on. It wasn't uncommon in the past for another grip on the floor to push you around from light to light or from flag to flag. We don't recommend that. I've actually seen accidents happen where grips hit their head, where grips or electricians almost got knocked off of the trestle part while it was moving. So the main tip for those type of ladders is come down to move it.
Great. Thank you, DeJon. And Christine, we can also put up Kristen's question as well. Are there any special guidelines for using Little Giant adjustable type ladders?
Yeah, I have one of these. To be honest, when we first got it, I was somewhat skeptical of it. And I would say that the first and most important thing about the Little Giants is to read the instructions and all the safety guidelines. They are different than regular ladders. An A-frame is to a large extent an A-frame, but the Little Giant is a little different. So you need to really familiarize yourself with the guidelines on how it's used, how it's maintained. Just go through the manual with that and know what it is. So I hate to be so general, but yeah, read the manual and become really, really familiar with it. And that should answer all of your questions. DeJon,
And if I may, the pinch points. I've had issues with pinch points on that piece of equipment. For that reason, I've stayed away from it. I've never gotten really used to using them. But I've seen them around. I'm seeing them more and more on personal, kits, key grip kits and gaffer kits. But be aware of the pinch points for that tool.
Great. And we have another question from Kevin. Any tips on safely leveling a ladder on uneven ground? I feel like, Alan, we've gotten this question a lot, the past times we've done this presentation. So I think it's really important.
Yeah, I would defer this to Local 80, since they do it a lot more than we do. So,
well, one of the main things to think about is to have a solid surface. So if you have a piece of plywood, 4x8 piece of plywood or 4x4, whatever could fit all 4 feet. Also, we'll use apple boxes, but smaller apple boxes like the pancakes. We never want to go too much more than a half apple box to help with leveling. And wedges always help. But it's very important that when you're leveling the ladder that you're doing so where it's on a solid surface. And then also you don't want to go too high. So if you're at an angle where you have to bring it up like a full apple's worth, we don't really recommend that. And whatever amount that you have to bring one side up, I suggest putting a sandbag on the bottom rung just to help secure it, keeping aware of the duty limit of the ladder you're using. So you have to think about the personnel, the crew member, his weight, and then if you're adding 25 more pounds in sand, you want to keep that in mind as you do that.
Great. And Christine, we have another question from Paul. Should a spotter wear a hard hat?
Never a bad idea. And the basic answer is, yeah, they should, but it may not, depends really a lot on what they're doing. But you're always going to be doing something on a ladder. I don't know anybody that really climbs the ladder for just the heck of it and doesn't do anything there. So I think it's definitely a good practice to wear a hard hat, because you're also going to be paying attention. Hopefully they should be paying attention to what is going on, what the activity on that ladder is. DeJon?
And to add to that, especially in arena rigging, hard hats are usually required. So the spotter should already have a hard hat on, because if you have work up high, at the 20-foot, 30-foot, 60-foot level, anything can fall out of the perms or the rafters. So it's important that if hard hats are being used, everyone should have that hard hat on, no matter what you're doing.
Great.
Excellent. Thanks, folks. We'll wait just another minute or two, if you don't mind. We'll just chat a little bit. We can always find our IATSE friends at our conference. Our next conference is in Baltimore, and I'm trying to look for that information for you right now. Baltimore in March, and I know that we always see Hannah there. I'm not, and Alan. I'm not sure about DeJon if he ever gets to join us. If you ever get to travel and join us, remember to get those last minute questions in. We'll just hang out here for another 30 seconds if you don't mind. But keep in touch with the USITT website. We have these webinars often, and they're free to everybody, whether you're a member or not. Any follow-up final words, Hannah? I think you had some. You want to share them now?
Yes, I actually think I'm going to share my screen again, if that's okay. We have a couple closing slides that I can go through.
Absolutely. Give me just 2 seconds.
Getting that set up.
Oh, okay. No problem.
All right.
And obviously, we're here to welcome the IATSE folks, because they were gracious enough to be an exhibitor at Virtually Anywhere 2021. We know it wasn't easy to be a virtual exhibitor, so we thank you for being with us.
Well, we had a great time, so thank you, Christine.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, great. So thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you for asking such great questions. It's always a pleasure to do this presentation, especially with this group. So yeah, before we close, we have some ladder safety resources. First is the NIOSH Ladder Safety app, and we've brought this up a couple times. I know Alan is a big fan, and Christine can put that up as a link. But yeah, the NIOSH Ladder Safety app, it is a free app through the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, which is kind of a branch of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention that deals with kind of the science side of occupational safety and health. And they have this app, and it is available for download, for free download on iPhones and Android devices. And it's a really great tool talking, back to the 4-to-1 ratio that Alan was talking about. This can help you level your ladder, and it also has some useful tips. And other than that, these are the links to our ladder safety resources. I know that Christine has been sharing them throughout this presentation. But first we have the American Ladder Institute, which I really want to shout out because they have been their resources are really great at helping us make this presentation and just for ladder safety tips in general. So I highly recommend, if you have more questions about ladders, to check out their website. And then of course, you have the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, that has a fall prevention campaign, and also National Ladder Safety Month, which I believe is a campaign done by the American Ladder Institute. That's every March. And we actually made this presentation in celebration of National Ladder Safety Month. So that is why we are here with you today. And with that, I just want to close. I just want to say thank you, Alan and DeJon. Do you have any closing remarks?
No, everybody, thank you for joining us. Be safe, stay cool, be calm. It's crazy out there, and be happy, be well.
Be safe, get home to your family. Nothing is worth your life or your limb. Take your time climbing ladders. You know, I know we're in show business. Everything is a rush. Take your time, do it properly, do it safely. Get home safe. Thank you.
Absolutely. And yep, thank you, everyone. Thank you, presenters. And exactly, safety should be top priority, and taking the time is most important. So Christine, I guess we'll hand it back off to you.
Well, Hannah, DeJon, Alan, thanks so much for bringing this content to us today and sharing it with our audience. Goodbye, everybody. Have a safe weekend. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.